can be obtained from the Certified Gazette Notice number 6253, dated 27th June 2017, for purposes of the 8th August election, and Gazette Notice number 8751 of 5th September 2017. The register has been closed from 27th of June 2017, and the same has not been opened for purposes of the election pursuant to Section 5. The numbers which have been thrown at you saying the register has been mutating relate to a provisional register which emanated from the KPMG audit report, which was ordered by the first respondent. The provisional register at that time before cleaning was a number which was not 19,611,423, but after cleaning the register settled on 19,611,423. The Form 34C that was delivered to this court on 8th of August will bear that out. The Form 34C that we have delivered, the certified copy to this court, will also bear that out. And my Lord, a comparison will actually show that the register has never changed. It has not been a moving target, and it will not change unless, of course, the register is open again for purposes of continuous registration of Kenyans. The other issue that we want to invite the court to, the court should take judicial notice of the fact that the voters' register has been subject of litigation. In judicial review case number 447 of 2017, Gladwell Otieno versus IEBC, which is in our bundle of revised authorities, my Lord, this issue was canvassed before Justice Udunga, and a ruling was given. The commission was ordered to publish the register in a newspaper where people can access it. The same was done on 7th of August. This, as far as we know, there has been no appeal as related to this case. So the issue of register, that the register is changing and all that, it is not true, and that can be borne out by the documents that have been provided to this court. The second issue that we want to canvass, my lords, is what are the processes that were instituted by the first and the second respondent, and how are they different from the processes that were instituted by the same on 8th of August. That is the process which were impugned by this court. And we will demonstrate that the processes that we instituted were very different in three ways. The first, as relates to the register, which I have already canvassed. The second is as relates to the biometric voter identification, or what we call the EVIT. And the third will relate to the RTS. My lords, the biometric voter registration system counts the voter enrollment. That is taking the fingerprints of Kenyans, as well as their facial images, and the same are put in the KIMS kit, which we generally refer to as the register for each of the polling stations. The same is secure by various codes. They are customized to each polling station, and they have other security features. For example, they have scanning barcodes and QR codes, which is able to ensure that the person who is on the register for each of the polling stations is the person who is identified. No person who is supposed to vote in a different polling station can be identified by any of those schemes, because those schemes, as I had explained to you earlier, those schemes are localized for those number of Kenyans. As it relates to the RTS, we put in place mechanisms to ensure that the statutory forms, the Form 34A, are transmitted by image to the constituency tallying centers, as well as to the national tallying center. The Form 34Bs were also transmitted through a secure platform, and the same was uploaded for the whole world and Kenyans to compare with the results of the Form 34As. My lords, if you look at the verification process that was undertaken by the first and the second respondent, it was elaborate. The verification process that was undertaken was a 4-tier verification process that involved the following. The first, at the point of counting, of manual counting, agents are present. Form 34A are filled thereafter. After the forms are filled, the same are scanned, and the images are sent to each of the constituencies, the 291 constituencies. After the images are sent to the constituencies, the same images are relayed to the county, to the National Tallying Center at Bomas. The same form is pasted at the door of each polling station, which is an added measure of security. No complaint has been raised about that process, about the process that has been undertaken as relates to that verification.
You transmitted the images of those forms.
We transmitted all the images of those forms, both to the county constituency tallying center as well as to the national tallying center at Bomas.
From all the polling stations?
From all the polling stations which reported on that day which voted, which were 92% of the 40,883 polling stations, my lord. After that was done, an additional measure was put in place. The returning officers were mandated to compare the returns of all the 34As before generating the B. A 34B was generated by the returning officer. The same was transmitted through a virtual private network, a secure network, to the National Tallying Center at Bomas. Thereafter, the returning officer, together with some of his officials, were mandated to come with the original physical copies of all the Form 34A and 34B to the National Tallying Center to present the same to the National Returning Officer, who is the chairman of the commission. Once they arrived in Bomas, a few processes happened, my lord. The first process that happened, copies of those forms were taken, and agents were invited to compare the originals with the copies the agents had. A verification, an elaborate verification process was undertaken by the chairman, and the same together with the agents of the political parties who were present. After the verification process was concluded, the physical copy of Form 34B was presented to the chairperson of the commission. On presentation of the physical copy of the Form 34B, the chairman compared the returns of the A's with the B's and thereafter signed a handing over report. My lord, we have done a scrutiny of all the Form 34Bs which were presented to the chairman. The same are annexed to the affidavit of Silas Njeru as SN4. And my lord, if you look at it, what we undertook is a serious exercise, a self-scrutiny exercise. If you look from page 55 of that affidavit, all the way to page 94, we have looked at each and every form, the constituency, the serial number, the stamp, the party agent signature, the RO signature, the handing over notes, the taking over notes by the chairman. And my lord, these forms, certified copy of these forms have been provided to this court, and you will come to the same conclusion that we came to, that of the 266 Form 34B which are available, all of them have serial numbers, all of them have handing over notes, and all of them have taking over notes. You will also come to the conclusion that 25 constituencies whose election was postponed, as explained by my senior Kamau Karori, did not have any Form 34B. It is only after that has been done that the chairman officially announced the result at Bomas. And the same results were displayed for everyone to see. My lord, this is a four-tier process. And why do we say it's a four-tier process? The first scrutiny process is at the constituency, where the agents are filling the forms. The second scrutiny process is when the RO transmits, the PO transmit all the A's and the RO transmit the B to the portal where someone can compare if there is any variance between the 34A and 34B. The third level of scrutiny is the physical forms are brought to the National Tallying Center for actual verification. And the fourth and the important verification process is the KIMS logs, the KIMS authenticated voters report was provided to all the agents, including the server logs, to authenticate whether the number of people who are authenticated through that KIMS process matches with the Form 34A. So, my lord, if you ask question, if someone contested the authenticity of a 34A, because the idea is technology was used to ensure that there is a control mechanism when the manual processes fail, because manual processes, there is human intervention, and with human interventions, errors might arise and other issues. To the question, what if someone contested the original Form 34As? What if someone contested? Do you have a fallback mechanism to actually prove the persons who are indicated as the persons who validly voted in that A is the same as what is in the A? My lord, there is a control mechanism. And the control mechanism is from the authenticated logs of the SD cards of those schemes, which we have provided to this court. My lord, it shows how many people were identified through which method through the KIMS. And at the end of the day, you can look at a Form 34A and compare with what you have from the KIMS return. And you will get a good indication where what is the variances, and you will be able to explain. So there's a fail-safe mechanism. And with that fail-safe mechanism, my lord, we will address you to paragraph 33 of the affidavit of Silas Njeru, which we have set out how many people were identified using what mechanism. We have done a beautiful table for you on the voters identified using biometric search. And I explained those are the voters who were identified initially through their thumbprints, the ones who were identified through a documentary search, and later on through any of their fingerprints, the 10 or the 9, and the ones whose ID could not scan the MRZ scanner, but we entered their ID numbers, and thereafter when their details came up, that is their biographic details as well as the biometric, then we tell them to put their fingers. The number of people who are identified in that way is 7,364,360. 96% of the total number of Kenyans who went through the polling stations were identified using fingerprints. And my lord, there is a lot of confusion, and last time I pointed out, it is, unless you understand how the KIM system works, is a bit confusing. There are submissions from the petitioners that 1.6 million people were identified alphanumerically, which means that we must have a 32A to back it up. Nothing can be further from the truth. In fact, the alphanumeric search they are talking about is a two-layer identification. We enter your ID, your details come, I explained last time, because the kit is looking at 7,000 fingerprints, but when we localize only for 10 fingerprints, it actually lowers the ability for it to reject someone whose fingerprints are there. Then we tell you, okay, your details have come up, put any of your fingerprints, then we identify you like that. And out of that, 96 people who passed through the polling stations were identified through the fingerprint, which gives you a good indication. 96% is an A+. I think that's a good indication, my lord.
Mr. Mahati, that alphanumeric identification.
Yes, my lord.
Is it shown in the KIMS?
It is shown in the KIMS.
As having been identified by...
Yes, it is shown in the KIMS. In fact, I will...
no, you don't have to do that. Is it there?
It is shown. In fact, when you look at it is there. When you look at a KIMS log,
yes,
it has all the identification mechanism.
Yeah.
So when you look, and my lords, you can look at the log and actually read it. It says the polling station opened on this date, this hour, the PO name is this is ID number, and it shows FP, fingerprint identification. If someone went through FP, fingerprint identification, then it shows HIT, fingerprint identification, HIT. Then when someone goes to alphanumeric, it shows alphanumeric, then it says HIT. And in fact, from looking at the log, you can actually see, you can just count From the log, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to how many people were identified. And it shows that who was identified through biometric, who was identified through alphanumeric, and who was even identified by documentary search or alphanumeric, but with supervisor's override. And it will say override, PO's override. Because the PO, your details can come up, but if any of your fingerprints cannot be able to take it, the PO has to enter a code because he has seen your details to allow you to vote. It will also show that. And the number of persons we put to you that who are not identified through the fingerprint is only 4%. Even though those people were identified also through the KIMS kit, because you go through an alphanumeric search, your fingerprints don't come up, then what do? The PO calls the agents. He says, can you see the details of this person? Is this his ID? Can you see all his fingers are here? But he's a Kenyan who does manual job. He's a Kenyan who is an old age whose fingerprints are not working. So what you see, it's him, his ID, have you compared? Are you okay? Can I do the override? Yes, override is entered. And if you close down to how many people were actually identified through the KIMS kit, it is 99%. Only 78,124 Kenyans were identified through a complementary mechanism, which is 2 Kenyans per polling station. My Lord, we put it to you that the chairman and the IEBC took the question you put out to them and the chance you gave them to redeem themselves very seriously. 99% of the Kenyans who went through that system were identified through the KIMS kit. We can back that up. We have given the documents to the court. There is an Excel sheet which the KIMS backend logs, which we have provided to the court. And a cursory look and see. In fact, we have even given an explanation to the court on how they can read the logs, the transmission logs, the ones which transmitted the data when the polling closed. We have given the information to the court, how many people were authenticated through any of those. So to the question that you have put to us, and what if someone says that the Form 34As or Bs, for one reason or another, are disputed in terms of the integrity, we have a backup fail system. We have a control system that can give the court an appropriate guidance on how many people were identified. And the question that 1.6 million people were identified in any other way that people don't know, it is not true. We are the custodians of that system. In fact, the fourth respondents were complaining us giving a lot of documents to the court. The petitioners are complaining that we are not given enough documents, and that shows that we are good arbiters. Everyone is hitting the chairman and the IEBC from all sides. And we have given everything to the court so that this court can make a just determination on this matter. The IEBC and the chairman do not have favorites. No one likes them, and they want to do their duty to the court. My Lord, that is the first issue that relates to the verification process. My Lord, another question was raised as relates to the authenticity of the forms that were uploaded into the system. My Lord, that allegation can be found in the affidavit of Boniface Otieno, and he does some analysis of the resolution of the quality of the form. My Lord, it is the same thing. We believe he does not understand how the KIMS lenses and the KIMS pictures work. My Lord, we want to tell you that the KIMS has the ability to have several pixel resolution. It has different settings for several pixel resolution. It has 0.345, it has 0.07 megapixel, 1.92, 5.03. Depending on how the PO set it, it will take different pictures. And the second thing, and more importantly, the KIMS kit is a stand-alone infrastructure that there is no one who can actually bring in information to it. In fact, at the end of the process, the kit reports, and the whole day it has been reporting how many people have been authenticated, how many people has it sent, and all that. And at the end of the day, all those logs are available, and you can see the only person who has access to it is the PO. There is no way any other person can use the key to do to send any other picture. The pixel resolutions have been set in different, and there are many things that affect the lens. A lot of Kenyans live in the rural areas. It is dark. It is midnight when these pictures are being taken in terms of the counting and the process. So to say that some of the pictures are too clear, we are being accused of sending too clear pictures. This is too clear. It is not like 8th of August. So the pictures are too clear, then you must have gotten this picture from somewhere else. But Lord, nothing can be further from the truth. The device is capable of sending any resolution of those pictures, and taking of the picture depends on anything. And we have said that in the affidavit of Silas Njeru, the smudge of the lens, depending on the proper focus, the lighting in the room. There are a lot of things that go into it. And in fact, we can back up that every form that was sent from a device of the mobile network provider, because we have given the call data records of the mobile network provider that actually give which device had what telephone number, which address, and what tower did it transmit from.
Could any image be transmitted into your system from any other gadget other than the KIMS?
My Lord, no image can be transmitted into our system other than the KIMS, because of and we have explained elaborately the security structure we have put in place. Remember last time we were using an FTP to send even the 34B. We amended that. We have a virtual private network which operates on a system which is robust. And my Lord, we also want to tell you, we embedded the political parties to participate in this process. They were there, they sat through this process, including how the transmission should be done. We also gave them access of our servers. The servers have been opened. And from the servers, they can see a lot of things. From the servers, you can gloss how many people transmitted what, how many people were authenticated, from which specific polling station. What was the transmission successful? What error messages was transmitted? How many people logged into this system? In terms and we even gave the observers and some of those agents access into the system so that they see real time. If you saw at Bomas, at the National Tallying Center, you will see a graph as to the transmission of the KIMS. How many KIMS have transmitted, how many, and that is one of the issues they raised, that there were a lot of statements given by the chairman that the turnout was 48%, the turnout was, you have to understand, the chairman at one point in time, 17,500 KIMS kit had transmitted. And as compared to each of those polling stations, the percentage of those KIMS which had transmitted was 48%. You had X number of people transmitting in this number of polling stations. Then he said, from the information we have 48 people. And then the interpretation that most of those people, and that clarification the chairman gave was, 48% is the turnout. The turnout will first depend on a lot of things. First, all the KIMS kit have to report. We have to account for the reporting of all the KIMS kit. And once all the KIMS kit have reported, we have to actually do that as against total number of registered voters. In this case, we did against 19,611, 423, even though 25 constituencies did not have any result. But we still put it, and that came to 38.84%. And if we remove those constituencies, it will be 42%. So, my Lord, that is another allegation we want to rebut. The third allegation, which we want to rebut, my Lord, there is a claim that the process that the IEBC and the chairman used to transmit the results was not in accordance with the law. And the reason why they say that is they say, since only the images was what was transmitted and not the text data, then the images must have been transmitted with the text data. My Lord, we want to make 3 points relating to this issue. At the point where the decision of Akuro Akot was made by Justice Mativo to include him,
It's the top of the hour. Very good evening to you. Our top stories tonight.
For you to come and tell us that because we have refused to allow you to come into this petition, we are abusing your rights, I want you to also think about that and check your language.
Day one gains and losses for opposing parties in challenge to Uhuru's re-election.
Blame game after deadly attack on convoy transporting exam papers in Baringo.
Martha Karua suffers another setback in her bid for Kirinyaga governorship.
We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice.
And military takes charge in Zimbabwe, signaling beginning of the end for Robert Mugabe.
NTV Tonight with Smriti Vidyarthi and Mark Masai.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us as well as our sign language interpreter Flora Atieno.
To our top story tonight, NTV has established that yesterday's banditry attack that left 3 police officers and an education officer dead in Kapedo, Turkana County occurred just 500 meters from where 21 police officers were massacred in the dreaded valley of Kasarani in late 2014.
Well, Tuesday's attack took place as a team of 8 police officers and the education officer returned examination papers to Lokori from Kapedo. Enox Kole will be giving us the details to that story in a moment. But first, the highlights from the Supreme Court. And Muhuri and Kurayangu Sautiyangu, the second applicants in the presidential petition, have been granted access to all forms 34A, B and C in accordance with the prayer number 14 of their 20 prayer application. The Supreme Court bench also granted them access to a certified copy of the voters' register from the IEBC at their own cost. The win, however, will not enable them to administer what they find before the court, as they have only gotten orders to view the documents. Well, there was a back and forth in court between lawyers Harun Dubi and Fred Ngatia, with each man giving reasons why a report after the access to that information may or may not be essential to the petition. Leila Mohammed brings us the highlights of the initial judgment of the pre-trial conference.
The second day of the Supreme petition began with the bench dismissing the applications of 2 private citizens who wished to be enjoined as interested parties. Caleb Wamaya and Stephen Ooko Ogamba were denied their application, with the court noting that the merits of their application by Ooko to participate would gravely strain the court's time to listen to the case, while Wamaya did not demonstrate how he will be effective in the case.
I've not been allowed to canvass my application, and therefore my rights have not been enforced. Your Lordships, I have a feeling that I've been discriminated. Could it be just because I was representing myself?
But for you to come and tell us that because we have refused to allow you to come into this petition, we are abusing your rights, I want you to also think about that and check your language.
While 2 out of 20 prayers submitted by Kurayangu, Sautiyangu and Muhuri were granted by the court, they lost out on the key issues that they wanted to be granted access to.
The second respondent is hereby ordered to grant access to all original Forms 34A, Forms 34B and Form 34C to the petitioners herein in accordance with prayer number 14 in that application. The second respondent is also to avail a certified copy of the voter register to the petitioners at the cost of the latter.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, through his lawyer Fred Ngatia, asked to be allowed to participate in access to the documents, but was not comfortable with the request of lawyer Harun Dubi to bring documents for comparison with those at the IEBC and submit a written report to the court.
We have asked for that scrutiny and access on account that we have to compare what we have with what has been produced in court and what they might be having.
My Lord, we are now expanding this into a very dangerous monster. My learned friend is not going to come to that hall with other documents to compare, because we now start to see a way that documents could be exchanged.
And what I thought my learned friend asked for is access, and we are perfectly willing to give that access. I don't see why the court now should be involved in another exercise that will delay the hearing.
The petitioners insisted before the court that the information they will be scrutinizing at the IEBC would be relevant to the proceedings.
The order that has been granted to you is for access.
My lady, what we did yesterday in our application to justify the orders that you have granted was to demonstrate certain discrepancies.
Is there any part of the order you did not understand?
No, I quite understand it.
Thank you.
Each party, the civil society duo and President Uhuru Kenyatta have been allowed 7 representatives to look at the documents with the team at the IEBC and report back to the court Thursday at 4 p.m. In their application, the second petitioner had requested access to SD cards of the Kim's kits, used ballot boxes used in the rerun election, KPMG report on the voters' register, minutes by the IEBC, other than use of memos by the IEBC to show infighting at the commission and that they were not ready to undertake a repeat election. At the close of day 1, NASA, which was the 4th respondent in the petition, was struck out. Jubilee, which wanted to be enjoined as an interested party, was also denied. The case by the Institute for Democratic Governance against NASA principles was also dropped, as well as the Attorney General's application to be enjoined as a friend of the court. With the Supreme petition pre-trial determinations out of the way, the next few days will be key for the judges and the lawyers to go through the determinations of this case, as Uhuru Kenyatta now awaits for whether to know if he will be inaugurated for his second term or Kenyans will have to go back to the ballot. Leila Mohammed, NTV, Nairobi.
Now, 2 voters who wanted to be enjoined in the ongoing presidential petition have faulted the Supreme Court for discriminating against their rights.
The two, Caleb Wamaya and Edwards Onyancha, had their applications thrown out yesterday and today respectively, but their responses have become a talking point as the petition continues.
NTV's Brenda Wanga has the details.
In the midst of the black-robed and suited advocates that turned up for the pre-trial conference, it was difficult to pick out the 2 unlikely applicants.
I have an application.
But when they stood up to speak, it was equally hard to ignore them.
You have denied me access to justice. Where do you wish I go to? Where do you wish I go to? My application was going to terminate the whole petitions in 15 minutes.
The 2 are seeking to be enjoined in the presidential petition as interested parties, but the applications were denied.
You are one of the 19 million voters in this country. If we allow each of the 19 million voters to come and be heard in these petitions, we will need some 2 years.
The reasons from the bench, however, did little to pacify the applicants who petitioned the court simply as voters seeking to protect their rights.
Your Lordships, it's unfair, it's too cruel, it's not right.
For you to come and tell us that because we have refused to allow you to come into this petition, we are abusing your rights, I want you to also think about that and check your language.
Onyancha says the years he has spent seeking justice in the courtrooms and the mishandling by lawyers is what has informed his thirst for law and justice.
The defendant's lawyer and the judges have been colluding to delay and deny me execution. And it is that which caused me to do research into the law which applies.
No, I'm not represented by...
The trained computer science and transport logistics officer from Nakuru prides himself in what he says is his consciousness of the law and faults the country's judicial system for locking out those who can't access lawyers from presenting their cases in court.
The basis of qualification is you must have interest, you must have participated and you feel your rights are being abused. This court, being the highest court in the country, refused to hear me. They decided on their own, came and pronounced their ruling dismissing my application.
Although twice denied, Onyancha said that he will not relent in his defense of his rights as a voter and of the Constitution of Kenya, and he maintains that should there be another presidential petition, he will still present himself before the Supreme Court. Brenda Wanga, NTV, Nairobi.
All right, from that, let's take you back to our top story now, where NTV has established that yesterday's banditry attack that left 3 police officers and an education officer dead in Kapedo in Turkana County occurred just 500 meters from where 21 police officers were massacred in the dreaded Valley of Kasarani in late 2014.
Tuesday's attack took place as a team of 8 police officers and the education officer returned KCSE examination papers to Lokori from Kapedo, and as Oxycolia reports, 5 police officers injured in the battle with bandits are currently receiving treatment in Nairobi.
Towards 5 p.m. on Tuesday, an incident occurred that marked yet another dark moment for the Kenya Police Service. It appeared to rewrite the 2014 horror when 21 police officers were massacred at Kasarani Valley, 20 kilometers from Kapedo Center. Into the second week of the ongoing KCC examinations, 1 education officer and a contingent of 8 administration police officers were on their routine of returning examination papers to Lokori from Kapedo Mixed Secondary School, but their journey was interrupted. 1 hour later, news of an attack on a police Land Cruiser broke. But it will take at least another hour for Kenyans to know the fate of those on board the police vehicle, and from it, tales of sorrowful loss and narrow escape emerged.
Ni tukio ambalo ni la kinyama, ni tukio ambalo sio mzuri.
The police Land Cruiser carrying the team was headed towards Lokori on the Kapedo Lodwar Road. As they turned into Kasarani area, the calmness of the valley blinded the occupants to the danger that lay ahead. 3 police officers were killed in the ensuing gunfire. 4 other officers sustained serious injuries. The driver, a police officer who was also shot in the abdomen, sped off heading to Lomelo. On board, the education officer who later succumbed to injuries on the way to Lomelo Dispensary.
It's unfortunate we lost one of the patients that was still being taken care of over the night, and also 3 police officers from this incident. That is very unfortunate, but we have now 5 casualties whom we want to evacuate.
Those injured in Kapedo were treated on Wednesday by a team from the Kenya Red Cross before being airlifted to Nairobi for specialized treatment. Tuesday's attack rekindling memories of a 2014 incident where 3 police officers were killed by bandits while protecting a vehicle that was transporting examination papers from Kapedo. A few days later, 21 police officers were massacred in the Kasarani Valley after being ambushed by bandits while on an operation to retrieve the vehicle that had been burnt in an earlier attack.
Tunasema kwamba serikali ichukue hatua ya haraka, hawa wakora washikwe na wale viongozi wao ambao wanahimiza jambo hili washikwe, kwa sababu sisi tumeambia Waturkana wasirevenge, wakae.
Oxycolia, NTV.
Back to the results from the Supreme Court, at least the highlights from today. John Jomue and Helef Khalifa, the petitioners seeking the annulment of the presidential election, are this evening grappling with the magnitude of their request, which was granted by the Supreme Court after the IEBC slapped them with an 80 million shillings bill.
Well, the Supreme Court had this morning ruled in their favor by granting their request to gain access to all Forms 34A, 34B and 34C. The petitioners were also granted permission to have a copy of the voter register used during the October 26th election.
Ken Mijungu reports.
The second respondent is also to avail a certified copy of the voter register to the petitioners at the cost of the latter. That means the petitioners. And this is in accord with prayer number 17.
A wish granted, but one that even the petitioners knew would face a hurdle. The exact nature not clear to them then.
And if we have difficulty, we'll be at liberty to approach the court. Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But now it's clear. The firm of Lucy Kambuni, one of the lawyers for the respondents on the Njonjomue and Khalifa petition, has written to the firm of Julie Soweto indicating their willingness to comply with the court order of availing a hard copy of the register, but at a printing cost of 80 million shillings. The 4-paragraph letter from Kambuni says Soweto should indicate availability of the funds before the printing commences.
Now, my lord, even if you assume we are 20 million voters in Kenya, and that each voter has one page in a register, it would take, and if you were to photocopy at 20 shillings per page, you would only need 40 million. Asking the second and third petitioners to pay 80 million shillings in advance is difficult to understand the basis.
As regards the cost, that is really a matter. You want 450,000 pages, there is a cost to pay for it. You can't ask for something and then not have the will to pay for it.
The scrutiny of the documents began this morning. The parties told the court different versions of the exercise. While the petitioner complained of hurdles from the IEBC, the respondents were happy with the process but accused the petitioner of attempting to change the scope of the order.
So if the court may direct that the third respondent, if he's not interested, fine, but the first respondent should provide the access immediately as we expected in the morning.
Parallel to this process, the hearing of the consolidated petition proceeded at the Supreme Court, with the petitioners arguing that there was need for fresh nominations before the October 26th election.
The first and the second respondent could not say, they could not foresee the difficulty or the challenge in holding an election that met all the principles under Article 81E, under Article 1 of the Constitution. It was not for them to decide whether some Kenyans get the right to universal suffrage and other Kenyans get an election that is free from violence, intimidation, improper influence.
Harun Mwau's lawyers told the court that there was need for the election to happen in all the 290 constituencies and that more than 1.6 million voters did not take part in the exercise.
My lords, when elections are null under Article 140, none of the previous candidates, none of the previous processes is saved. All processes are done away with, and actually in your order you said that election was null and void. So it's like it did not exist. We all know the meaning of that word.
The respondents told the court that there was no legal requirement for the commission to undertake fresh nominations. The violence in the 4 counties was also given as a reason for the inability of the commission to undertake the election in those areas.
How much violence did they want to, would a commission have waited to take place before it said we need to postpone these elections? Is it to wait until people have been killed? Is it to wait until property have been destroyed? And so, my lord, it did the correct thing in taking the decision to postpone the election to save loss of life.
While addressing the matter of withdrawal by Raila Odinga and if it affected the election, the respondents told the court the law does not foresee a situation where a candidate can come and go at will, having been gazetted as candidate for an election. The case continues. Ken Mijungu, NTV.
The presidential petition and now to the search for justice for 2 minors.
That's right. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Keriako Tobiko, has ordered the National Police Service to take action against 4 Kisumu police commanders following the death of 6-month-old baby Samantha Pendo during the August general election.
The DPP also directed that a public inquest into the killing of baby Pendo and 8-year-old Stephanie Mora, who was shot dead in Mathare, be instituted and asked the National Police Service to compensate their families.
Well, the children were allegedly killed by police officers deployed to quell demonstrations in Kisumu and Mathare, respectively.
The orders come a day after the Independent Policing Oversight Authority (IPOA) investigations into the 2 killings found the police commanders were negligent in the police operations.
Well, on the fatal shooting of Stephanie Mora, IPOA could not identify the particular officers who shot and caused her death on August the 12th while she played on a balcony.
Baby Samantha Pendo was allegedly hit on the head by a police officer using a baton in her home in Kisumu County, leading to her death on August 15th this year. The High Court in Kerugoya has dismissed a petition filed by NARC Kenya leader Martha Karua challenging the election of Anne Waiguru as Kirinyaga governor.
Lady Justice Lucy Gitari termed the petition fatally defective, hopeless and incurable after finding that Karua's petition lacked the date of declaration and the disputed results, which fails to comply with the election petition rules.
NTV's Melita Oletenges tells us more.
The petition filed by Martha Karua through her lawyer Gitobu Imanyara after the elections was seeking to nullify the gubernatorial elections held in Kirinyaga on grounds that the process was marred with irregularities, including tampered ballot boxes and forged ballot papers. However, the court today found that Karua had omitted the disputed election results and the dates they were declared by the electoral agency, which is mandatory in a petition.
A petition which has failed to state the date of declaration, the results of the election, and how declared, is fatally defective, is hopeless, and is beyond salvage. The consequence is that it must be struck out.
However, Martha Karua, who was present in court, has vowed to challenge the court's decision in the Court of Appeal, also questioning the credibility of the court.
My Lord, you will note that yesterday, when we came to court and the ruling was stood over to today, this court did not have a battery of journalists as it has today. And today, there is a noisy crowd out there. I suppose a celebration party by the applicants. And I'm just wondering roundly, did some parties have advance notice of the ruling?
On the other hand, Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru has stated that the victory has come about as a result of prayer, saying she does not believe the move by Karua to seek the intervention of the Court of Appeal will change a thing.
My understanding is when it's technically deficient to that nature, you cannot be allowed to proceed. So even if you went to appeal, they cannot change the law. And that is what the law says, and that's what the rules say. So it's a constitutional right to go ahead, I guess.
Anne Waiguru was escorted by her supporters from the court, chanting celebratory songs. Melita Oletenges, NTV.
Well, you can hear a lot more from Martha Karua later on in this bulletin because she'll be joining NTV's Larry Mado live on Sidebar that will air after this broadcast. So be sure to stay tuned.
That's right, and on to the top story in the continent right now. Military leaders in Zimbabwe have staged an apparent coup, placing veteran President Robert Mugabe under house arrest and deploying tanks to the streets of Harare.
The president of neighboring South Africa, Jacob Zuma, said the 93-year-old Mugabe, the world's longest living leader, was unable to leave his home.
The first signs that a military intervention was underway in Zimbabwe came Tuesday afternoon as tanks were seen near Harare.
Good morning, Zimbabwe.
The situation escalated with the early morning announcement when Major General Sibusio Moyo addressed the country on state TV.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Commander-in-Chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, Comrade R.G. Mugabe, and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed. We are only targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice.
Several cabinet ministers, including local government minister Xavier Kasukuwere and finance minister Ignatius Chombo and Mugabe's nephew Patrick Zuwayo were arrested. There was allegedly a brief gunfight outside Chombo's house. Chombo was a leading member of the so-called G40 faction of the ruling ZANU-PF party.
As soon as we have accomplished our mission, we expect that the situation will return to normalcy. We wish to make it abundantly clear that this is not a military takeover of government. What the Zimbabwe Defense Forces is doing is to pacify a degenerating political, social, and economic situation in our country, which, if not addressed, may result in a violent conflict.
South African President Jacob Zuma later said he had spoken with Mugabe by phone and that the veteran politician was confined to his home but feeling fine.
I am hoping that the Defense Force will not move and do more damage, that they will be able to respect the Constitution of Zimbabwe as well as the people of Zimbabwe. I will also be sending an envoy to His Excellency President of Angola to brief him as the chairperson of the organ of SADC on peace and security, so that there is a closer interaction between us and the Zimbabwean.
Soldiers have sealed access to parliament, government offices and courts in Harare. Access to the presidential's official residence was also blocked by troops. Political figures once loyal to Mugabe are beginning to turn away from him.
To us, it is a victory for the war veterans and the people of Zimbabwe, because the war veterans are the army of the people.
Zimbabwe's opposition Movement for Democratic Change Party said it hoped the military intervention would lead to the establishment of a stable, democratic and progressive nation state.
Over the years, we have been issuing out statements. We have been, telling our supporters and telling, in fact, Zimbabweans in general, telling the entire world, everyone who cared to listen, to say, look, this is an unsustainable system. The political repression of the Mugabe regime was not sustainable. This is why we say that ZANU-PF, in the form that it was always going to be an accident waiting to happen.
The intervention came after weeks of political shakeups in which Mugabe sacked his powerful vice president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who enjoyed wide support in the military and was tipped to become the next leader. The move fueled speculation that Mugabe would try to install his wife Grace to succeed him. So far, the atmosphere in the capital has been peaceful, but there also appeared to be some nervousness. Photographs showed long lines at ATMs and at banks. Meanwhile, world leaders have called for dialogue in Zimbabwe and a peaceful resolution to the crisis.
And we would urge restraint on all sides because we want to see and we would call for an avoidance of violence.
We call on all the relevant players to move from confrontation to dialogue with the aim to a peaceful resolution.
Mugabe has ruled Zimbabwe since the country gained independence from Britain in 1980. He was the country's first prime minister and later became president and has dominated Zimbabwean politics ever since.
And the story will definitely grip the international headlines for the next few days for this independence leader now on the House.
Yes, fascinating developments that are coming to us from Zimbabwe. We'll keep you updated.
More stories coming your way after this break.
All right, welcome back. Thanks very much for staying with us. The 36 billion shilling Thwake Dam in Kitui County will finally be constructed starting next year after the Ministry of Water signed the contract with a Chinese company, China Gazuba, to put up one of the largest dams in the country and the region.
The construction had been derailed by tender wars at the Ministry of Water, which Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa says have now been resolved.
The ministry says that this is one of the mega dams to be constructed that will improve the country's water storage capacity and distribution.
The story of the 610 million cubic meter Thwake Dam has had more ifs and maybes. Now the Ministry of Water seems to have waded through the tender wars that have derailed the construction of the mega dam since 2016. The CS and Irrigation PS Patrick Nduati Mwangi had been pulling in different directions over which Chinese company should build the dam. The PS preferred the second lowest bidder Sino Hydro to the lowest bidder Gazuba over integrity concerns.
The signing is going on.
Today, however, the ministry put pen to paper on the 36.9 billion shillings project that will be carried out by China Gazuba and partly funded by the African Development Bank.
We want to ask the contractor, after signing of this contract, the people of Ukambani have waited for this project for a long time. We will not entertain any delays. We would like within 90 days, immediately after Christmas, to proceed to Ukambani for the groundbreaking ceremony.
The dam is expected to solve the complicated water arithmetic for the three much drier counties of the lower eastern region. It is expected to create a vast water reservoir, perhaps one of the largest in the country and region.
The Kaini Dam, that takes care of Nairobi and Kiambu, compared to Thwake Dam, what we are starting today is 10 times what the Kaini Dam is. That is how large Thwake Dam will be. We are talking of towns like Wote, Kibwezi, and even Konza Techno City.
Maybe because you have said this is going to be completed in 56 months, Molio is going to be a thing of the past in Ukambani after this dam.
It is not the first time China Gazuba is paddling through the country's water politics. The company is also constructing the controversial Murang'a Northern Water Collector Tunnel that is expected to boost Nairobi's water supply with an extra 700,000 cubic meters of water per day. Challenges to the project included a stream of concerns about its ecological impact in the long run, and worries by Murang'a residents that whatever water is there is hardly enough to slake their own thirst before it is piped to Nairobi. With nearly half the country battling long seasons of drought, the main concern now is water, chiefly its absence. The Ministry of Water is putting up 60 mega dams across the country, the details of which were shared with the President at his Harambee House office. This is part of plans to triple the country's water storage and improve the national water coverage to 80% by 2020. But that's another big if. Sheila Sendeo, NTV.
At least 12 patients are being held on the 4th floor of the Nairobi Women's Hospital in Ongata Rongai for failing to pay their medical bills.
The patients were all treated for various health issues but have not been allowed to leave due to outstanding bills.
NTV's Steve Juma spoke to them and brings us their account.
On the 4th floor of the Nairobi Women's Hospital located in Ongata Rongai are men and women in detention. These are patients who receive treatment but could not foot all their bills. Some have been at this institution for as long as 11 months, and there is little sign that the hospital is about to let up. This despite the fact that some are in urgent need of further medical attention. Joshua Lemaya, who was admitted here 6 months ago after being referred from a facility in Magadi, still has a swelling on his genitals despite receiving treatment. He needs further medical attention, but the hospital's management won't let him leave because he owes 1.7 million shillings. He claims that the hospital has denied him the right to access further medical treatment even as his condition worsened.
Kila mahali pote tulipita, kila mlango iko na security. Siwezi toka hata nje. Hata nimeumia, mgongo siwezi tembea, kwenda chuo ni shida. Hata leo vile unasikia mbaya sana zaidi. Nilijaribu saa hii kuita wadaktari, anasema faili imefunga.
His wife has deserted him during his stay in the hospital.
I'm not a prisoner.
Thomas Mboya Hasinji, who comes from Kibra, was shot and injured by robbers and was admitted at the hospital on the 5th of last month. Upon treatment, he was transferred from Adam Arcade's branch of the hospital to this room. He's required to pay 400,000 shillings before he can leave. He says his wife also abandoned him.
We have been put in this hospital like we have been jailed, and we just became sick like any other person can get sick. And now we've been detained in here like prisoners, and at least we need to be released so that we can go back to our normal lives, because I don't even know how my children are at the moment, and I couldn't raise enough funds for the hospital bill, and as we were being detained, the bill was going up and rising higher and higher.
I'm not a prisoner, I need help.
Isaac Njoroge, a 19-year-old student of Karuri High School, is also locked up. He was involved in a road accident along Limuru Nairobi Road on the 21st of December 2016. He has been treated and recovered, but he can't leave unless he pays 2.8 million shillings. The bill keeps rising. He says his dream to sit this year's KCSE has been broken.
I need to go back to school and read and study with my colleagues. It's very hard. I have a bill of 2.8 million.
Are you being treated now?
No, I stopped being treated much.
In Kihika village, Kiamba in Kiambu County, his mother Sarah Mumbi, a mother of 6, is going about her chores. She shares her experience.
Ndugu zake hata ninawapelekaga huko wakamuone kwa vile hata hao wanakaa na kilio. Wananiuliza huyo kijana wetu mama atatoka huko. Ninawaambia huyo sasa tumgoje Mungu kwa vile tumetafuta pesa tumelemewa.
Our attempts to reach the Nairobi Women's Hospital for their response bore no fruit. The hospital's administration demanded questions in email and is yet to answer any of the questions advanced. Instead, after inquiries, the hospital transferred some of the people it had locked up to the Adams Arcade branch from Ongata Rongai, where they have been detained.
Na sijapata matibabu ya kutosha.
Steve Juma, NTV.
All right, and from that story, we take a break here on NTV Tonight. Do stay with us. Hudhaifa Aiden has the business news up next.
NTV Business, I am Hudayfa Adin. Now, Nairobi Securities Exchange has announced a suspension in trading of Kenya Airways shares effective today until the 29th of this month. NSE says the suspension is aimed at facilitating the share split and consolidation of the company's shares in light of the capital optimization plan that has seen massive changes in the airline's ownership structure. The Capital Markets Authority approved the suspension on Tuesday. Government of Kenya now commands a 48.9% stake in the airline, while Royal Dutch Airlines KLM has been left with a 7.8% stake. Kenya Airways will on Friday announce its half-year results. Controversy concerning a prime piece of land being reclaimed next to the Indian Ocean in Mombasa escalated today, with officials from the county government blocking access to a road being used by the private investor to get their business premise. The county government says it was compelled to take the move to enforce a court order it claims the investor had refused to comply with. Peter Mwangangi reports on the tussle that saw a lot of dirt thrown around.
10 a.m. Wednesday morning. Mombasa County officials used mounds of garbage from the nearby Kibarani Dam site and blocked the exit of Makupa Transit Shed, a cargo handling facility. The blockade disrupted business at the facility, with drivers who had gone to pick cargo failing to access the premises.
So where say huwezi toka? Huwezi toka, mlango umefungwa, huwezi toka. Hii ndio barabara kutoka. Hii siku ya leo ni kama ambayo tumeshaipoteza na imeishia hivyo. Wako kiasara namna gani?
According to the county government, the action was warranted by the realization that operations were allegedly going on inside the facility despite a court order which restrained the company from using that piece of land.
It was brought to our notice that there were activities going on, and in particular commercial activities. Our actions are purely to ensure that the court order is respected. We've not interfered with anything outside. We've not removed any trucks.
Efforts to get a comment from the company bore no fruit. A source who did not want to be identified, however, said it was unfair to block the road, which he claimed is a public utility, saying other businesses had also been affected as a result.
There exists no road there. And if there is any, I want anybody to, whoever is claiming that there's a road, to bring any evidence. Because as far as I'm concerned, we as county will be the ones who know whether there's a road there.
Less than a fortnight ago, the Court of Appeal issued an order restraining Makupa Transit Shed, which operates a container freight station, from continuing with any reclamation of the Indian Ocean at Makupa Creek, pending the hearing and determination of the case. The county asserts that the reclamation will have adverse effects on marine life, but the company, on the other hand, says it acquired it through all the required approvals. Peter Mwangangi, NTV, Mombasa.
Now, listed lender Diamond Trust Bank has announced results for the third quarter ending September 2017, registering a slight drop in after-tax profit. On the same breath, struggling retailer Uchumi Supermarkets has released its full-year results that ended on the 30th of June. Let's take a deeper look at the performance of the two companies. Diamond Trust Bank recorded a 4% drop in profit after tax for the 9 months to the end of September. The lender's net profit for the third quarter stood at 4.7 billion shillings compared to 4.9 billion shillings at a similar period last year. Customer deposits went up by 4.1% to 10.1 billion shillings. The amount for the bank's gross non-performing loans, however, more than doubled, rising to 16.6 billion shillings. Net interest income had a slight decrease of just 1.4% to 14.5 billion shillings. Banks have been grappling with the effects of the low cap in interest rates, which statistics show has had an adverse impact on the economy. Uchumi Supermarkets' full-year results indicate that the retailer has reduced its loss after tax by close to 40% to 1.7 billion shillings. Net sales dipped by a whopping 59% to 2.6 billion shillings. Uchumi's total asset now stands at 4.3 billion shillings from 5 billion shillings it had in the previous year. The retailer had been given a qualified opinion by its auditors, an indicator that the auditors were not satisfied with the financial reporting of the company. Uchomi's discussion in search of a potential strategic investor are still ongoing. It says a government shareholder loan of 700 million shillings is imminent. Makomboki Tea Factory's annual general meeting saw the grounds it was being held turn into a battlefield after some shareholders engaged in fistfights over who to chair the meeting. A court order had directed Regional Director Willis Odhiambo should chair the forum, but the opposing faction claimed that the company's bylaws do not allow him to do so. Tension was palpable right after the opening prayer of the meeting, with open discord between the parties manifesting soon after. At some point, a shareholder stood up and alleged that some of the participants were not genuine shareholders but goons who had been hired to disrupt the meeting. Police officers had to intervene to keep the two camps apart. The factory's regional manager refused to address the press, only saying they will convene again next year's general meeting. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has reiterated his desire to have the country's economic plans benefiting the common mwananchi. He said this when he met members of his economic team and the African Development Bank's regional director to discuss continued implementation of the country's transformation agenda. The meeting comes amidst a year when the country's economic growth rate is expected to dip to 5.1% from an earlier projected 5.9%. The meeting with economic team comes after meetings with senior officials in the energy and water sectors. Now that has been the latest in business. With me, Hudhaifa Eden. More to come.
NTV Business News with Fire Awards 2017.
The Fire Award 2017 is here, and you are invited.
Welcome back. Motorists using Mombasa Road today experienced delays after the National Transport and Security Authority, Safety Authority, NTSA, set up a roadblock at the Machakos Junction to check compliance of the drivers and passengers with traffic rules.
Well, the NTSA officials, led by the Director General, Francis Meja, stopped all manner of vehicles. Motorists had to park their cars at the roadside for some time to facilitate the checks, and those whose vehicles were found not in compliance had their number plates confiscated.
They checked the speed governors on public service vehicles, and the speed vehicles were moving at. This comes as Kenya prepares to mark the upcoming World Day for Remembrance of Victims of Road Crashes on Sunday 19th in Karai on the Nakuru-Naivasha Highway. They say such roadblocks will be mounted in other regions of the country to sensitize motorists.
Check. And we are not going to charge anybody to court. What we want to do is to educate the members of the public, check the vehicles, and where they are defective vehicles, the only thing that on serious offenses like missing governors, you have seen some vehicles which ought to have been having fitted with governors without them. Those ones are serious offenses, and we gave them what we call a prohibition order.
And Brian Otral is eager to bring you the sports of the day, so why don't we take a break for that?
look at the day's sports news. Welcome, my name is Brian Otwal. With just one match to go in the Kenyan Top Flight League, Zoo Kericho have cemented their place in the Premier League with a 2-1 win over Thika United in a match played in Kericho. With the win, Zoo, who were promoted last season, have now climbed from 15th to 12th on the log with 40 points, and the result also means that Mathare United are on 15th and on 38 points. Thika stays 16th on 35 points, with Western Stima second from bottom also on 35. One of these three teams will automatically be relegated, while another will play in a promotion playoff as yet another totally escapes the drop. And moving on from the Premier League to the National Super League, Vihiga United have climbed to third on the National Super League after beating hosts Palos FC 1-0 at the Moi Stadium in Kisumu, maintaining their hopes of promotion to the Top Flight League. Vihiga ensured they collected the maximum points thanks to the winner scored by Kevin Monyi in the 64th minute. Vihiga tie on 74 points with second place Wazito FC, though with an inferior goal difference. Ushuru topped the league on 75 points from 34 matches. KCB drops to 4th on 73 points. Palos remains in 7th position with 45 points. The penultimate leg of the NSL season takes place this weekend. And to some rugby, Kenya Simbas will be without Homeboy's 8th man Joshua Chisanga for their match against hosts Hong Kong at the Cup of Nations on Saturday. Chisanga is ruled out with a knee injury sustained in their 31-10 defeat to Russia that was yesterday, and head coach Jerome Parota said the tournament is a good preparation platform for the team ahead of the future matches and tournaments.
It's a learning curve. It's a very high standard competition in a very high paced game, but it's good for us in preparation where we want to go. And just regarding with the injuries, a big blow for us is I think Joshua Chisanga will be out for Saturday. His knee doesn't look too good. I think he's going to be out for a while, but we're fortunate or unfortunately to have him out, but fortunate not too many injuries.
To some World Cup qualifiers, and Mile Jedinak scored 2 penalties and forced an own goal as Australia reached next year's World Cup at the expense of Honduras following a 3-1 aggregate victory. A goalless draw in Honduras on Friday saw the Intercontinental Playoff head to a winner. That is, a winner takes it all in Sydney today, and this will be the Socceroos' 4th straight appearance at the tournament. Meanwhile, Tottenham's Christian Eriksen scored a hat-trick as Denmark came from behind to end Republic of Ireland's World Cup dream with an emphatic 5-1 playoff win in Dublin. Ireland had produced when it mattered in playoffs to reach their last World Cup finals in 2002 as well as Euro 2016, but they were outclassed by a side for which Eriksen starred. And New Zealand coach Anthony Hudson said his small but strong side are pressure-free and brimming with confidence ahead of tonight's World Cup playoff second leg against Peru. New Zealand are underdogs for the encounter in Lima after Saturday's first leg in Wellington ended in a goalless draw. New Zealand expect to have striker Chris Wood back in the starting lineup after injury limited him to a late substitute appearance in Wellington. The winner of today's Intercontinental Playoff will join 31 other teams in Russia next year.
Used to this situation 4 years ago in Mexico, opening game against Confederations Cup Russia, away to Mexico, away to Japan. Like, this team is used to difficult situations. In fact, I would say we're probably more suited and more resilient away from home than we are at home because we're not used to playing at home.
Denmark crushed the Republic of Ireland 5-1 in Dublin to qualify for the World Cup. On a busy night of international friendlies, Nigeria beat Argentina 4-2 in a match where Sergio Aguero was taken to hospital but cleared. Meanwhile, Brazil and England played out a goalless draw at Wembley.
Iheanacho, the Leicester man, towards the spot, one touch, buried, Ogu, just as...
And in Russia, Sergio Aguero has undergone medical checks after reports he fell ill.
Atieno, our sign language interpreter. I'm Smriti Vidyarthi. Have yourselves a great night.
And I'm Masai. Thank you for watching NTV Tonight. We're done here, but Sidebar begins in a moment with Larry Mado, and he is hosting Na Kenya leader Martha Karua. Of course, today the big story from her, at least, was that the petition she had filed challenging the election of the Kirinyaga governor, Anne Waiguru, was dismissed. She'll definitely have more to say about this. And